panned by critics for not living up to the original trilogy and just feeling overall formulaic and lacking that spark. Does it really deserve all of this terrible reviews? It's time to find out. What's up, it's Film Frenzy, back with a new movie review, this time for the remake of Men in Black International, starring Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson. Let's get right into the review. My first category of discussion: direction and visuals. So, direction and visuals is a category that can really go all sorts of ways with action movies. This is one of the very important ones. This isn't really going to be something that's a make or break for like a romantic comedy, but an action movie like Men in Black International, it's very important. I think overall, they do a pretty good job with it. So, I think the visuals overall, they're not exactly gorgeous. There's some scenes that really stood out to me. For example, the nighttime scene where they're in like the Sahara Desert. Even though it kind of felt like it was kind of ripped from Aquaman, there was some really nice shots. I thought they did a great job of like just building the scenery of that Middle Eastern or like North African town where there was a lot of like alien stuff going on. I thought that looked awesome. The sets were very detailed and great. I thought they did a really good job with the aesthetic of like the different like Men in Black branches, like the headquarters and stuff, like the London and the New York one. Overall, I thought like the individual sets looked really nice and detailed, which I appreciated a lot. Just a lot to look at. And the shots, even though they weren't exactly like above and beyond, they were still very nice, and most of the action sequences were really good. Some of the ones that stood out to me were actually in the beginning of the film. For example, the one that introduces you kind of to Chris Hemsworth, like Solo, like is the one where he's like fighting that like alien guy at like he was playing the card game with him, like the deadly card game. I don't want to spoil the scene too much, but it happens early on and it's pretty sick to watch. The first scene of the film is a pretty decent action scene too, where you see Liam Neeson and Chris Hemsworth's agents going together against the Hive. And that was, I thought, a pretty nice scene overall. There were some definitely weaker action sequences that even after like only being a day since I last saw the movie, I kind of am already forgetting, so that's never great. And overall, I feel like there was definitely a little bit of like unoriginality with some of the shots and sequences, but overall they do a solid job here. 4 out of 5 for direction and visuals. Next up, it's time to talk about acting and character development. Acting is one of the biggest positives in Men in Black International. Overall, the cast is top-notch, and they all do a great job. Of course, the ones that really stood out to me were Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth. They have phenomenal chemistry in Thor Ragnarok, and they brought all of it here, luckily. I'm really thankful for that, because I was kind of reluctant going into this movie, but I was really hoping for that one thing, that they would just be really likable on screen, and I can fully testify that they were awesome. I think their character was actually really developed too. Both of them were very multidimensional, extremely likable, just like in the first act of the movie, which might be the best part of the film, I would say. You get introduced to these two awesome characters, very detailed characters. They're played beautifully. They have such great like play off each other. Excellent chemistry. Overall, they're just top-notch. Probably the best part about this movie, and that it really holds all together. Because honestly, without these two leads, the movie would falter a bit. And I was just so glad that Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth brought it all. They're just awesome actors. I can't wait to see them cast in more movies together. They're awesome. Liam Neeson did a decent job. He wasn't given a ton of work. There's a couple other side characters that didn't get a ton of development either. They were just kind of generic, like your action thriller comedy characters there. I feel like are in like every movie. There was an alien arms dealer that I felt was kind of ripped off of like some Star Wars movie, and that was just unfortunate because even though she was kind of a colorful and like interesting character, it felt kind of unoriginal. I feel like that's like something that like just like perpetuates the movie overall. Is this like tone of like just unoriginality and kind of just like a little bit of laziness with some of the things, which is unfortunate. But at least they got the main two characters developed really well. The big problem, though, is the villain, and that is a spoiler. So, spoiler tab is up. When the spoiler tab goes away, you can watch the rest of the video if you haven't seen the movie yet. So, the villain, of course, is a big twist, and I thought that twist was extremely cliche. I saw it coming from a mile away, and that would be Liam Neeson, who's the head of the England branch of the Men in Black. I feel like that always happens in these thriller movies. You think they're trying to make you think it's like one guy, like is the mole in the organization, who's like this guy Agent C, who's kind of like the foil of Chris Hemsworth's character. But of course, he turns out to be a good guy, like they always do. He's just kind of a jerk. And then, of course, like the mentor, the leader of it, they always turn out to be the big bad, and that was a really terrible twist. You don't even get to understand the villain's motivations. It was kind of confusing. Like, it seemed like he was a member of the Hive that was disguised as Liam Neeson, like Neeson's character. It was kind of confusing, and I feel like they just didn't explain it well. It was very poorly developed. I saw the twist from a mile away, and that really, really, really hurts this category so much. Like, why you have to be such a weak villain? Because otherwise the characters are fine. It's okay that the supporting characters aren't developed enough, but can at least, like, just the villain be pretty good? Because the leads were great, so that was unfortunate, and because of the weak villain, I'll be giving this category a 3 out of 5. Last category up for discussion are the story elements of plot, pacing, script, and theme. No matter the genre, the various story elements are always going to be the most important category for a film. It's the groundwork for the movie, it's what ties all together, and it falters a bit in Men in Black International, unfortunately, and it holds it back from being a very good film, and that is really sad. So I'm going to start with plot, which is definitely one of the weaker elements, and I found this plot to be insanely basic. Honestly, like I previously mentioned a little bit, I thought the exposition was set up very well, and maybe it's a bit generic, but they did a great job of doing it, and I thought there weren't really many flaws to point out, and I was watching this, I was like, really, this movie got like a 22%? This seems pretty solid. I liked it. And the second act, maybe it lags a little bit, but that's like expected for all of these like action movies. It feels like lots of them do that. And I didn't really mind the second act at all either. I thought it was very enjoyable for those first 2 acts. Pretty solid job. The pacing was good. And then the third act, they kind of blow it. And that's unfortunate. That is often the make or break it act of a film. And with action movies, they can break the film a lot in that third act. And part of that is the pacing just felt a little awry. Like, it was just really awkward sometimes, and I thought that was unfortunate. And lots of the third act being kind of problematic has to do with that terrible villain twist that I mentioned earlier. Not going to do the spoiler again for it. And it was just a generic CGI fight at the end that was just so anticlimactic and just pathetic. There was like 2 separate fights, but it's like you find out, oh, this is like what really happened, and it was just so generic, and it just felt lazy. Like, really, the writers could have just done a bit better job, made like the twist interesting. Or if you're gonna have such a pathetic twist, maybe don't have a twist. That would have been a much better. I have like just a good, clean, simple ending. That would have been fine. But they had to butcher the third act, and that was unfortunate because the pacing and the plot being weird. And then one other thing I want to mention, or 2 other things actually with the plot. More nitpicks are the other twist, which is a much more minor twist than the villain one. I'm not going to mention it here, I'm not going to spoil it, but you'll know it when you see it. I found it to be way too contrived, and that was unfortunate. It felt a little silly, it felt kind of like it's in lots of these movies. It was a bit problematic. And then the other thing is that throughout the first 2 acts, which this is probably the main fault I have with the first 2 acts, even though there's not much, is that character motivations are switched, I think, a bit too quickly, and things sometimes happen too easily or too quickly, and I guess that's okay, because probably because they're trying to keep it like a fast-paced film, and I'm okay with that. It's a small nitpick, and that's not really the big problems I have with plot. That goes in the third act, and that allowed the pacing to be very smooth and be overall a fast-paced, enjoyable film, besides that third act just being kind of awkward. And then that brings me to script. So the drama usually was just kind of melodramatic, and there was some decent melodrama. It wasn't bad per se, but sometimes it just felt way too generic and didn't really feel genuine, and you can really sense that in the film when it's genuine or just kind of cliche. And usually it was kind of cliche, but not like flat out bad per se. Like the lines, I felt like there was no line in this movie that really just stood out. It was just really bad, and I thought that was good. That was very important. I was glad about that. And then the humor, I thought it was hit or miss, but usually it hit, and that's largely part, not really, the writing was good, some humor was just hilarious, like there's some great lines in this movie, and there's like some great just like skits that happen in the movie, I would say, but lots of humor just kind of like okay, but it's elevated so much by pretty solid direction and the top-notch 2 lead characters. The actors are great, of course, like I mentioned before. So they elevate lots of the mediocre jokes into being very good jokes. So I thought the humor was pretty solid in the film, and the drama was handled mediocrely. I mean, it was fine. I didn't really have too big of a problem with it. I wasn't going to this movie expecting drama, and that leads into my theme category, which it's kind of void of. I thought they did try to set up a bit of a theme with just like recklessness versus like having a plan and stuff, and trying to like tie that together, but I feel like they didn't really fit all together much. And it was just kind of left like an unfinished theme that was just kind of sitting there. Maybe I was just looking into it too far and there wasn't even a theme at all. I don't know, but it just seemed like a recurring element. I do like when movies have themes. That's when they go above and beyond, like in the spy thriller category. but it's okay that it didn't. I didn't mind too much. And then one other thing I want to mention is lots of people are kind of like, oh my god, they're remaking the Men in Black but with women this time, because, you know, that happened with a lot of other movies and didn't go so well, like Ghostbusters and Ocean's 8. And I feel like this is a bit different because it's still called the Men in Black, and they make some very funny jokes about it, how they're like attached to the name, but they're just saying like, yeah, there's like women in the organization too, and they don't make it too big of a deal. And I feel like that's very great because they don't like try to like rub anybody the wrong way that's watching the film. Like, it's definitely just like not trying to make a political statement. It's just trying to be a good watch. Shows both genders, you know, kicking butt. It's just an enjoyable watch, and I thought that was really great that they didn't have to go into like the eye-rolling like woke politics that I feel like plagues lots of these like remakes with, you know, women instead of males. And of course I would rather see new films that feature women instead of just a remake, because, you know, they're gonna be better. It's like Bridesmaids versus Ghostbusters. Obviously people like Bridesmaids more, but I thought this was fine. I didn't have any problem with Tessa Thompson being one of the Men in Black. I thought she was great. I was really happy with it. I mean, she was an awesome character. So I guess that's kind of a theme, maybe, but this category overall, it's not the best. I'm giving it a 2.5 out of 5. It's very just average in this. So that leads to my overall score. And what factors into the overall score is, I think any movie that I found very enjoyable, that I liked watching, it's going to be a thumbs up. I liked it. So it's at least a 2.5 out of 5. And of course, there are some big problems, particularly with the villain, and just kind of a generic feel to the film, and of course that third act I mentioned before, and kind of just a lack of themes, and just like some mediocre drama. So it's not going to be great or anything, but I would say it's in the good category. 3 out of 5, that's my overall score for Men in Black International. So my consensus is the critics were way too harsh on this thing. They're comparing it to the original, and the original honestly is not that much better. I'd never loved the original movies. I thought they were definitely better than this, besides the second one, which I don't even like the second Men in Black. But I thought this was a solid watch. They were too harsh on this. Yes, it feels generic, and maybe it lacks that spark sometimes, but the two lead actors make up for it, along with some fantastic action sequences. Overall, it's a fun watch. Maybe not a must-see for the theaters per se, but if you want a good time, I would recommend it. I think the critics were too harsh. Personally, I give this a thumbs up. This is Film Frenzy. I hope you enjoyed this review. Make sure to comment down below your thoughts on Men in Black International. Like and subscribe for more awesome movie reviews and rankings and other videos, and I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.